Calling to order the South Maui Community Plan Advisory Committee at 5:30 p.m. And can we have a roll call?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, Chair Rob Weltman. Vice Chair Daniel Kanahele. Present. Tova Callender. Present. Everett Dowling. Present. Okay. Lehua Huddleston Hafoka. Present. Brennan Kalanikau. Present. Randall Leach. You are present. Mike Moran. Okay. Cody Nemeth. Present. Wayne Nishiki. There you go. Kyoki Feltzer. There you go. Jennifer Sullivan. Yay. And Brian Ward. Okay, all present. Thank you.
Excellent. We're on a streak. Vilina mai ne lala o ke komike o lala o kai ulu no ka papaho o lala o Maui hama. Vilina mai no hoi e ka poe o ke ena ho o lala o ke lana o Maui. A me ka leho o Maui ne. I holomua ka ko i ke iahi ahi. I ke kuka ane na i kamahana no ka lole ana o ke ane au. A me na po ino li ka ole no hoi e lik i la ame ka po ino ahi. So let's see, we have just a couple of minor housekeeping things. We still have no live streaming on Akaku, but live streaming on the KCA website, or Facebook page, and still no ability to testify remotely. I think Mike has a report for us.
Aloha, everyone. Two items. One is kind of informal, one to our fellow commissioners. Those of you that were here 2 weeks ago, we had 1 5-minute break for the whole meeting. So I took it upon myself to badger the chair to remind him about breaks. And I think everybody was here last week. And if you noticed, promptly 1 hour, we got a break. 2 hours, we got a break. And at the 3-hour point, he offered a break. So I know one of the challenges the chair has is when he gives us a break, people are not coming back on time. So if we want to keep getting those breaks, please try and get back on time. Now a more formal point. You saw the notice we got from the Corp Council about when you have a number of you gather at some function. So the Kihei Community Association Design Review Committee happens to have 4 of our committee members on it. And this month, 3 of us participated in a walkthrough at the ranch land at their invitation. It was an unusual thing. It's normally reviewing a project. This was just their invitation to come out, walk the land, and talk about things in the future. And 3 of us did participate, the chair, the vice chair, and myself. Everett is also on that committee, but he didn't make that walk. I think he only wants to meet in the office. I think he doesn't want to go out and meet publicly. So that's, we have to give that, we're asked to give that report. And that was, what we did. We walked the land, we looked at it. It had no bearing on CPAC. And if the other 2 guys want to make a comment, of course they can. If they don't, unless anybody has any questions, we can proceed. Mahalo.
So it may have bearing on CPAC, but I think what Mike means is there was no CPAC discussion, no discussion of CPAC business there. Any questions? Okay, so that was the housekeeping part.
Hey, Chair.
Yes.
We can go. I'd like to make a motion. We go over the properties proposed by the 3/8/2023 CPAC for acquisition and then action of topic 4.
You can propose that. Is there a second? Second by Daniel.
Personally, for me, I like to relive that. Usually after when I go home, from our meetings, takes a couple of days for me to, things sink in. And then we get these testimonies that come through. It's a lot. And myself and a few others, we involved with these open space and what we see as wetlands. But I think we should have discussions on continue that, Chair. And maybe we gotta change I just gonna call them the action that was that we put in last week. Maybe we're gonna change that tonight. Not maybe, we going.
Okay, so I'm going to try and find this so I can read exactly what it is that we adopted, so we can discuss that. Hang on a second.
So looking at it, this one is obviously by you, but there's also the one over here with the testifiers' comments here, testimony, Charlene Schulenberg, but it's all in alignment of the same thing. So, and the document I look, are you pulling them up? Okay, thanks, Karen. So, what's implemented right now? Adopted text 3/8/2023, explore the feasibility of purchasing flood-prone parcels under the threat of condemnation, such as the TMKs listed. I think there's like 7 of them, and designate as open space protected lands in perpetuity. I'd like to propose that we change that text. And Karen, you can type that in and we can view that and talk about it.
You want to read your proposal? You want to read your proposal for changing it?
So the language I like putting there is you have the TMKs already up there, Karen. But after the TMK, and designate as open space protected lands in perpetuity. So the beginning of the language here is purchase wetlands. Purchase wetlands with the TMKs, yeah. I can read them out if you want, Karen. But it's 7 of them. Yep. So the language is purchase wetlands, followed by all the TMKs. And after the last TMK number, and designate as open space protected lands in perpetuity. That's just my personal strong opinion. So we don't have much open space, wetlands, floodplains, prone floodplains, or whatever we like call them. It's all still the same. The TMKs, that becomes challenging with TMKs. For me, when we're talking about wetlands, the wetland normal boundary lines, some studies that we were involved, it's funny that my left foot's there in the water, that's wetland, and my right foot is not designated as wetland. So I view these open areas as corridors, continuous, without no TMKs, because the wetland can expand on its own naturally come tomorrow, and then get less water come next week. But it's that whole area is how I view it. I'll just use Welakahau Village, that parcel, as an example. There is a section down there, like 5-6 acres, designated as wetland, but it's on 42 acres on that TMK. But it's a wetland corridor. But just that 5-6 acres is in 40 acres. That's that's not much, you know. I mean, so whatever we have left here in South Maui, that's all we got, and that's all we're asking to conserve and protect those open spaces. Anyone else?
So I think that these particular properties, those 7, they're all wetlands. I mean, there's, like the Wellacao property is huge, and part of it is wet, part of it is not. So you could do an easement on part of that or something, but these particular 7, they're all wet. They're all wetlands. Stormwater flows through pretty much every square inch of them. Any other discussion? Daniel?
Yeah, I think it. Thank you, Chair. I think there needs to be a second for the motion because Vernon made a motion that we discuss this before the actual motion was, the language for the motion was completed. So I think there needs to be a actual second for the actual proposed language.
Will you be the actual second?
I will second it for discussion purposes.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second with the shortened and simplified text on the screen. Discussion? Oh, Karen?
Last week I did simplify a complex situation by just saying they're not wetlands. They are not currently designated as wetlands. So that's what concerns me about just saying purchase wetlands, is the wetland overlay has not been done yet. So I did propose some, or I sent some language to you and to Robin Knox today that kind of expands it and makes it more clear, because the language you have right now is the flood-prone parcels, which I understand does not meet what the committee is trying to do. But to just call something a wetland that has not been designated a wetland, it might not have the power you think it does.
So if you look at the bill, the bill says that if it fulfills any one of these criteria, passes stormwater, functions for flood retention, a whole bunch of them, then it is a wetland. These properties fulfill almost every single one of those. They're outstanding in that regard. And also, very important to note is that the wetland bill explicitly protects and calls for acquisition of wetlands. It says nothing about flood-prone properties. That's just not a concept that even exists in the wetlands bill. So this corresponds to the bill that was adopted by the county last fall. If they're not wetlands, then we have nothing to fall back on, to rely on, to protect them. And I think if you look at the criteria in the bill, if you look at those pictures and see how they correspond, I don't see how anyone could say that these are not wetlands according to the criteria of the county.
Mr. Chairman, can you read off the tax team member and the acreages of the 7 the motion is being made for clarification? Who made the motion?
Sorry.
Read the tax team number.
Sorry, I go read the tax map key numbers and you like the acreage.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that. Sorry, Uncle. I don't get them someplace. This one, yeah? Okay, here we go. 3, 9, oh, I'm just going to say the dash. 3-9-001-162. That is 7.001 acres. Next one, 3-9-062-019. That would be 2.4162 acres. And Uncle, we get the printout on the acres if you want it. But I can read them if you like for the record. Okay. Next one, 3-9-001-164. That one is 3.335 acres. Next one, 3-9-059-001. That is 2.142 acres. Next one, 3-9-046-011. Okay, where that bar went? 011. Sorry, Uncle, looking for that one. The last one, yeah. That one is 1.531 acres. 1.531 acres. And that's what I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Did I write them all out? Did I read them all out? How about this one? 3-9-058-061. That one is 1.088 acres. And that was from this copy.
Further discussion? Yeah, Lua?
So in regard to the comment about these not, or some of these are not actual wetlands, according to Planning Department. And then Rob, you said that these are under, I guess the county outlines what can be. But does it have to be something, I think this is why I'd asked a while ago when it was introduced, you know, as to where are these properties and, you know, et cetera. But so do we have to make a proposal to say that we have to first find out if these are indeed, if there is some kind of a protocol, rather than just saying that they are just based on? I don't know what the requirement would be, because I don't think we can proceed any further without being able to say, yes, these are definitely considered wetlands in writing under the county, or it's a founded wetlands through, you know, like for example, from David Dorn with these organizations. I just don't want us to waste time on these, and then we cannot go any further. And so, and then I just wanted to ask Vernon if you could maybe make it clear what the motion is in terms of what you're proposing. Because I think we have two things going on, trying to figure out if these are indeed wetlands, and then what it is that you would like, if you don't mind, please.
So, yeah, I made the motion, but I also wanted to have discussion. So, I have to make another motion? Because that's what Daniel was asking too, yeah, for discussion.
Yeah, I second the motion for discussion.
So, yeah, so that's where we're still at, I believe, right?
So the bill, the ordinance 5421 says areas that provide wetland functions are considered wetlands, including conveyance of stormwater, flood attenuation and storage, sediment attenuation and reduction, nutrient and chemical attenuation and reduction, plant community abundance and diversity, fish and wildlife habitat, groundwater recharge and discharge, shoreline or stream bank stabilization, carbon sequestration. So there is no question in my mind that these lands convey stormwater, that they attenuate and store flood water, that they attenuate and reduce sediment. Any one of these is enough to be a wetland, according to the county. So that's the current ordinance. Yes.
So we do have a, with respect to the wetlands ordinance, one of our assignments is to create a wetlands map. And we are executing the contract for that. It was, I think the notice to proceed was either the 13th or today or tomorrow or something like that. So work is going to begin on that very question that Lehua is asking on specifically mapping out these wetlands. So come October or November, we will have that question answered with this map that we are starting on creating. It's going to be initiated any day now. So that should provide some really good information. So coming soon.
Vernon?
Okay, so if we're not going to talk any more about it, then we can wait.
Unless we are really, really slow and get a lot of more extensions, we're not going to be meeting in October. Mike?
My understanding is what we're doing with this plan is saying what we want. We're not saying what the law is going to be or what's going to be designated. We're asking for what we want to be done. So, I mean, I don't think we're asking anything extreme, but I expect we could. We could ask something extreme and put it in there. But it seems that we have good community input, and we're listening to community members and also people who are, I think we can use the word experts, who are giving information. And if it seems reasonable and logical to us, we can put it in the plan. And I don't see we have to wait until for something else. That's my understanding what we're doing. So I don't see any reason why we couldn't agree to this tonight, in my opinion. Mahalo.
Cody and then Daniel.
I was given some information from Robin as well, Robin Knox, and I was just wondering if I could propose kind of what you wanted to add on as to maybe give this action a little bit more teeth. But so after perpetuity, another sentence added to it would be explore the feasibility of obtaining conservation easements or purchasing through negotiation or under the threat of condemnation wetlands. And then in parentheses, including but not limited to gulches, continuous, intermittent, and ephemeral streams, stream beds, and floodplains. And then going into other flood-prone parcels and designated as open space protected lands in perpetuity. Yeah. So
That's pretty good.
explore the feasibility of obtaining conservation easements or purchasing through negotiation or under the threat of condemnation wetlands. And then in parentheses, including but not limited to gulches, continuous, intermittent, and ephemeral streams, stream beds, and floodplains, parentheses. And then floodplains, yeah. And other flood-prone parcels, and designate flood-prone parcels and designate as open space protected lands in perpetuity.
So that extends the scope beyond just the 7 properties, and it also talks about the option of an easement as opposed to outright acquisition. It was Daniel, Daniel, and then the Hua, and then Kyoki. Okay, the Hua.
So Mike, I agree with what you're saying, but if we can refer back up to the top, so in terms of purchased wetland parcels under threat of condemnation such as, or possible properties such as, so that might make it like, we're not saying they're for sure, and I agree with what you're saying, but maybe just throwing in that word, yeah, possible properties to look at, because, and then when that time comes that is like 100% those are deemed as, then it should be fine. And any other properties that are deemed as wetlands. So I would like to propose that, possible properties to look at, such instead of such as. But I guess such as is almost the same, but it's saying that those already are wetlands. But possible properties to look at would be the following. So that's what I'm proposing.
Thank you, okay.
Yeah, what she said. Actually, so my train of thought, Cody's proposal added a lot along the lines of kind of where I was thinking. We can, through our use of language, we can help protect the integrity of the intention of this action. I know about possible, like Karen was saying, they aren't designated yet, but our use of language in the beginning, it originated as purchasing flood prone, and then we took that out and said purchase wetland parcels. So my train of thought was kind of want to know what you guys think about, like just incorporating that as flood prone and possible future wetland designations. Then that way, you know, the intention of this gets kind of protected, the integrity of it. You guys know where I'm, kind of see where I'm going with that? Yeah, something like that, so.
So
What do you guys think?
wetlands are protected in law. They're protected in the ordinance. Flood-prone properties are not.
Sure.
So I mean, if we want to have something really happen, if we want to have so I mean, the ordinance says that the conservation or the Conservation Planning Committee may advise the mayor to authorize the county to acquire real property containing wetlands, either by negotiation or by eminent domain. May seek execution of a conservation easement, the second part here, to restore or protect wetlands. It doesn't say anything about flood-prone properties, so we're out on thin ice there. I mean, if we want to have the force of law, then we need to say wetlands. And also, if you just say in general, or properties like this, or possibly, or explore, there's nothing that guarantees that it'll happen. If we feel that these properties should be acquired and protected, then we should say that. Then it may happen. It may still not happen, but if we don't say that, it will not happen.
I'm voicing my concerns because this is very broad and it could potentially mean we have to buy all of Kihei. And so I'm very, very concerned by this one. Thank you.
Is that a motion?
Second.
Sorry.
Further discussion? So let's see, so we have, you propose additional text, Cody. Do you accept that as a friendly amendment, Vernon?
Yes.
And Daniel?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please,
So
Chair?
Cody proposed the additional text after the in perpetuity, and Vernon accepts as a friendly amendment. Do you also accept as a friendly amendment?
Oh, okay. I too have concerns about the language being very broad. I mean, we had a very specific goal, action, and then you've been, it almost seems like they should be separated, you know, in my mind. So it's too much for one, I think it's too much for one action. I would prefer if it was somehow separated into two actions.
That was my reaction too. But what do you think, Vernon? And Cody, actually, since Cody proposed the addition. Make it as two separate actions.
Yeah, I see that now.
Are you
So
okay
it's
with
like
that, Cody?
in-
Make it two separate actions?
Yeah, I see that now. Thanks,
Okay.
Daniel.
Okay. In that case, we can deal with the first one and then go to the second one. So,
Jackie, a good question. Jackie.
Go ahead.
So you brought up that maybe the county might end up buying the whole South Maui. But maybe you're going to get situations where nonprofit will step up and acquire some of those lands and not so much on the county.
My concern is the broadness of this and that it could encompass such a vast area, because you could interpret this to say, well, all of Kihei is prone to flooding, and there's no way the county can purchase, or I don't think a nonprofit could even purchase all of Kihei. And I also was wondering, you know, somewhat, if there's easements, then I believe that development can't occur, and I believe at least one of these TMKs has an easement, so I don't know why we would buy that if there's already a county easement, which would require the property owner to keep the land clear.
So not all of Keys is a wetland. I mean, there are a number of fairly well identified. You can see that in the map that was provided by the Save the Wetlands Hui. So it could be more than these, yes, but these are really these are the killers. These are the ones that really killed South Maui. I mean, yeah, North Kihei, and that's why I think they were proposed. But anyway, we can if since Vernon and Cody are okay with dealing with as separate items, separate actions, we can deal with the first one and then go on to the second one.
Yeah, after Daniel mentioned, yeah, we keep it separate.
Okay, Cody.
I just kind of felt that that added language, the way I kind of viewed it, it didn't necessarily look at the whole Kihei, but more so areas like this, and that in the future, to kind of have our eyes open and to explore the possibilities of other areas that may need the same sort of attention.
It is actually very consistent with what's in the ordinance. And I think, aren't you on the Conservation Planning Committee, Vernon?
Yeah, well, what you saw, because we hardly been meeting, because new administration and during the campaign time.
Because it says that the committee may advise the mayor to authorize the county to acquire real property, et cetera, seek execution of a conservation easement to restore or protect wetlands, and then goes on to define what a wetland is. So I think you have a lot of power in your hands there. You can make this happen.
Yeah, and then we're going to reconvene soon again, and that probably going to come back up.
So I don't actually see that language as in any way contradictory to what's in the ordinance. It's pretty much just reinforcing what's in the ordinance. Daniel?
I'm speaking to the motion that I seconded. And I do, if we go back and look at the vision statement, you recall the vision statement is the preferred future we'd like to see for the South Maui region. And so if the preferred future is that wetlands, flood-prone areas, the ones that we've identified be preserved because they create a great flood risk to that area. And I don't necessarily feel we have to worry about whether we have the maps right now. Again, it's the preferred future. It's what we'd like to see happen in the future. Whether it happens or not, who knows? But we would like to see this happen. We'd like to see these wetlands purchased. So again, the vision of this plan is the preferred future we would like to see down the road, not what it is now, but what it could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Okay, so go ahead, Renan.
So Jackie, when it comes up like the county gotta purchase, let's say they gotta buy them. So it's gonna be at the property value at that moment, yeah? You know what I mean? So, and I just thinking ahead, I'm not one realtor or anything, but that number can come down, because we're talking about wetlands, yeah. And also looking at what happened to South Maui, the county didn't benefit by covering all our wetlands. The county did well, profit-wise, tax-wise, and all the projects that happened in our wetlands, they did well in the last decades. So just speaking for myself, there's only a few empty spots left in South Maui. Not preserving the past or remnants of the past. It's using these open spaces, or wetlands we call them, to help mitigate the damage that's occurring right now in South Maui. Even what we have left, it's not a whole lot to help mitigate these floodings already. The climate change, those houses that near Halama Street and Mauka of Halama Street, they're all experiencing nature's wetland. It's happening. Nature is taking it back, with or without the buildings on the land. So, in a small token way, it's like not asking too much for. But yeah, so yeah, they would buy it, yeah, for like the property value at that time, yeah. Because I know like Kulani Hakoi, through the years, the value go up. I don't know how that works in one river or one gulch, but the price keep going up. It's kind of.
Yeah, who doesn't want a riverside property?
So, Vernon, you are correct that the county would have to pay usually the market price. My understanding is that the county tries to avoid condemnation just because it'd rather work with property owners than force a sale, at least in my experience, my observations. Some of these, though, I was looking on pictometry, and they're not developable areas, so, open areas between subdivisions. Some of these are skinny strips or gulches that are not developable. So I don't know that anything would happen to these lots regardless of who the owner is, just because you can't put anything on them.
problem is they keep coming back. They were brought up by Peter Savio, and he brought his plans to the Planning Commission, and he gets beat up, but he brings them back again. And so if we don't, and
One TMK, I see that, but the others are like open areas between subdivisions.
also this 3904611, it went all the way through the Planning Commission and finally got killed by the County Council in the end of last year. So that was by a 5-4 vote, and it could easily be a 5-4 vote the other way in the future. So as long as they're available for development, there's no guarantees that they won't be developed. I think that Kelly King had asked for 5.8 million when she put that forward to the mayor last year. But who knows what the total appraised value would be today. Further discussion? Lua?
So in the beginning, it says purchase wetland parcels under the threat of condemnation. So we're looking specifically at those parcels that could be, and Jackie just said that we try to stay away from that. So, but do we have to use the word threat of condemnation? Because if we can just have a friendly, hey, you know what, this is wetland, and it's best, it's whatever, you're not going to be able to build on it. I mean, that's the threat of condemnation. I mean, I agreed upon that at the last meeting, but because it sounds like that's the only way that we're going to get it, and it sounds so threatening. I mean, what if somebody says, yeah, you know what, yeah, take them because we cannot build, so like you don't have to even go there. So maybe just to say purchase wetland parcels, that's it, rather than under the threat of condemnation.
So I think threat of condemnation is not the same as eminent domain. I think you may be mixing those two things up. But Everett, you proposed that last time, so what is the reason for that?
I think it might help the county acquire the properties. So maybe we could say, and if necessary, under the threat of condemnation.
Then I would agree with that because it just shows no other alternative, and we just want to try to stay away from that. So as an alternative, if we have to, then yes.
Yeah, because I had heard, I don't know if this is true, that if it's under threat of condemnation, they get a tax benefit.
Yes.
And so that makes it better for them actually to sell that way.
Or they can donate it. They can donate it and get a tax write-off. Possible, you never know. Yeah.
But this way they get both.
Yeah, so either way, but just trying to sound a little bit more pono, so to do the right thing, but absolutely in support of the wetlands, but yeah, I like it if necessary under the threat of condemnation, so.
Mike knows, and you probably know that there are 4 parcels, down there by Halama Street and Waihuli Road. That owner like donate those 4 TMKs. So you never know. You never know. I personally would rather work with the agencies and the developers. I personally, good at that. But we gotta protect ourselves and the Aina.
So you're the one who made the motion, so do you accept or are you rejecting the suggestion by Everett and by Lehua? Just a second, Wayne. I need to get an answer from...
Yeah, I accept.
You accept?
Yep.
The one from Everett or the one from Lehua?
Oh, his one.
Everett's, okay.
But you're not done, right?
No, but if I could just add something.
If necessary. Okay.
Purchase or acquire, I mean, is acquiring, if you just put acquire, because that's a possibility of donation, exchange, or whatever. So just adding that in there, that's the only thing. So that's just part of the Pono process, but if can, that's it.
Okay, we had Wayne next and then Brian.
I don't want to be a fortune teller. You got Keoki dealing with Malaya. And throughout the state, you got people on the West Maui dealing with Hanakauai. Here in South Maui, you got people dealing with Halama Street. I'm asking you guys to think about the financial impact of the sweeping motion you're about to make. Will open your eyes. With sea level rise, you're talking about moving the fire station because of sea level rise of Mauka. Who is to say what will happen to all of us? Jackie makes a point. You're going to have to deal with a lot of wetlands. Are you able to dig in your pockets tonight and tell me what the financial impact will be to all of us?
So now we go back to square one. You grumble that we don't speak up. Now we speak up. And then now you're going to ask me, one number. You know what I mean? We're back to square one. So now
I'm not
you're
here to
talking-
argue with you.
No, now you're talking about money. No, mind us. You gotta think about yourself, what you feel, what you want to say. So now you're going to look at me and put this, what, going to cost us money. Yeah, it's going to cost money. I don't know. But if money going to be a problem, I get no problem. Yeah, we pave everything. We save it or we pave it. If we pave it, we don't got to worry. Just pave them. So in my shoes, that's where I stay. Either we pave this or we save it. So here I try to massage this a little bit. Everybody over here get their different thoughts. It's a tough discussion. I get what Jackie's saying, I get what you say, and I get what they say. Kind of quiet tonight because it's a tough topic. It's quiet. So with all this stuff that we get and the email, that's a lot for us to absorb. We don't know. So I would rather keep them simple, purchase all the wetlands, all the TMKs, and all the TMKs that we miss. That's me, just keep them simple. But we gotta learn how to put certain language in there that celebrate everybody else in the community, not just us. So for me, it's not easy. Not easy. Because when I leave here tonight, I probably will screw up maybe, I don't know. For me, it takes time for process. So that's why I wanted to bring this back for discussion tonight. But not too much discussion tonight, because it's a tough one. And for me, I would rather work with the developers. My relationships is always good, and things do change and huli, because it's not always about us on our grass shack. God, I still like my credit card. So it is tough. But I mean, what? Better I just pull this motion.
Are you done talking?
Yeah, I can pull the motion.
Shut up. Planning Department, has there been a wetland study being done? And have we yet identified lands that are called wetlands here in South Maui?
Wayne, this is Jackie. So we have a contract that just began for the mapping project. We have a consultant, and so they're going to start very, very soon on that project.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I admire everybody's passion, everybody on this committee. We're all here for the same reason. We all care about this place deeply. It might be varying reasons, but as Mike pointed out, we're not proposing laws. We're proposing language that can hopefully help protect the intent and the integrity of the actions and policies that we've been working on for the last 5 months. I personally, reviewing the Kihei Wailea plan 24 years ago, a lot of things weren't gotten to, so we're revisiting many of them. Just personally, and this is all due respect ongoing, I thank you for all the things you've done for this island in the past, present, and future. I would rather shoot high so that we get to hear, if anything, than not shoot up there at all. So I'm in support of proposals like Vernon proposed, because I think I get where he's going with it. Like I said, I'd rather shoot high, because like that plan 24 years ago showed, we're not going to be able to get to everything. So that's just my mana'o on it. Thank you, guys.
Brian, I'm sorry I skipped over you for a couple times, sir.
No problem. No problem. So a couple quick comments. One, I would actually agree with Lahua's comment about the acquire. I think putting the word purchase in is a very specific designation. I think acquiring does leave it much more open. It could be purchase. It could be a donation. It could be some other combination. I think purchase it's very defined. So my recommendation would be to take purchase out and put acquire in, because acquire, again, can be various methods of donation, splitting, partial, leasing, call it whatever you want. The second is a question, not a comment. In looking at the different parcels, and to Wayne's point of sea level rise, not knowing where it's going to be, how high it's going to be, how fast, are some of the parcels really things that we'd want to include in the list, because could they not be potentially underwater within the duration of buying? Like, if we were to acquire them, do we need to acquire them if they're potentially going to be underwater in 5 years? So again, question, not a statement, but more something for us to think about is, are we, to your point, Kyoki, we might be shooting high, but are we shooting too high things that we don't need to be shooting at to make it so that it's too high, that it doesn't get accomplished? Or do we look at it and say, maybe some of this is too close to the ocean, we're anticipating the sea level rise based on the studies that we're seeing, and do we back off on those as maybe not as much of a priority versus the ones that are higher up? Just a thought.
So I think the intent is not to acquire them to develop them. The intent is more to acquire them to preserve them with their function as wetlands. In other words, they slow the flow of stormwater into the ocean, and even improve them. We could plant native plants like Cody's doing, things like that. They'll increase their capacity to function as wetlands as opposed to as development.
Sure, but if I wasn't going for development, I was going more if they're going to be underwater in the very near future, potentially, then is the acquisition of the parcel, does it mean the same thing? It may in the next X number of years, but if we're looking longer vision, to Daniel's point of saying, this is what the future is going to look like, if the chance that that's potentially going to be in the water, or a new beachfront, or whatever it may play out to, I'm just thinking from prioritization perspective, the one closest to the ocean probably in my mind wouldn't be the one that I would tackle first, because it's probably the one that's going to be affected the first. Again, just food for thought as we're kind of trying to play this out.
They do play a very important function today for slowing stormwater, and those are the ones that Cody and Brandy and other people are working on exactly for that purpose, because so that instead of being just pathways for the groundwater to hit the ocean, they actually absorb it. So there is important work that can be done there if they're in our hands, if they're in the public's hands. Lehua, and then Cody.
So Brian, I hear what you're saying. I hear exactly what you're saying. So maybe purchase or acquire, I'm going to use the word feasible wetland parcels, but parcels that would be identified as worth the investment or worth the trade or so forth because of what you're saying, and so forth. So, but I'm sure there has to be some kind of structure that would say, yeah, we're not going to be able to because it's going to be, gone in 2 years or something. And I don't think there would be such a strong support to do that. I could be wrong, but I hear what you're saying. So I don't know, just thinking of the word acquire feasible wetland parcels, but parcels that would be identified as worth spending the money, or even though all wetlands are worth it, but I think what you're saying is considering the ones that might be closer, but I would just assume that they wouldn't purchase it just because you could say it's going to be gone, you know. But you're trying to protect that. So I hear what you're saying. So I don't know. I just saying the word feasible or too many words already. I don't know. But I hear what you're saying. So I'm just thinking of feasible wetlands. That might be the wrong word, but something identifiable, feasible, I'm not sure. But I get what you're saying.
Hey, Cody.
I just wanted to add that in my short experience, I have noticed, like if you ever go to Kanaha and you see the water come up, you know, the water will always come up over, and it's because we got a good vegetation over there of native and endemic plants that are really creating a good ground cover over there, yeah. When you're in areas like Kalama Street and where there's a lot of foot traffic, heavy traffic, or if you've seen what's been going down at by the canoe hale, where there's a lot of foot traffic and not too much plants. Everything is basically breaking apart, eroding. I think it is important that we look to acquiring these spaces as soon as can, only so that the land can create the opportunity to develop a very strong seed bank and foundation as to, you know, maybe like later on and then hoping that it can kind of create the buffer zone that it needs, but it might be too late. So I do think that is pretty important. And with sea level rise, anyway, the water is going to come up, but I think the difference is that the water can come up in a way where the foundation is still intact, or it can come up in a way where it just kind of breaks everything apart, you know.
Vernon.
So Jackie, just one scenario. Halama Street. Realtor guys come in, help those owners sell them. And then the issue becomes a lot of people buy these properties sight unseen. And maybe, I don't know, not now, but we got to figure out that, yeah, because when they buy sight unseen, then the new owner's stuck. And then they go see Munikeo Hiraga, cost money. And then here we come, not working out. So and then the value goes up, yeah? Then you're gonna turn around and you're gonna try to sell it. So just rubbing off what Brian was sharing, that we, you know, might not pay too much attention where it's closer to the ocean, but people are going to start selling. And then people are going to buy, and then they're going to get stuck with that. So I just wanted to comment on that, because somewhere, somehow, I think we got to implement something. Because then the county going to end up getting involved. Then we're going to ask the county for biome. And so it becomes more than just what we're looking on right now. Halama Street might be on here one day in 8-10 years. But because of the realtor industry, helping these guys sell them and get out.
Thank you, Vernon. So my understanding, and I'm not an expert in real estate, but there is a law that was passed maybe a couple of years ago that realtors must disclose sea level rise regarding properties. So property owners should know that, and hopefully people do their research. We're kind of getting off topic here with sea level rise and managed retreat and all of that, but there are some other endeavors to try to, help with that problem. So that's kind of a different subject, though.
Okay, Daniel. Let's try and focus on the motion that's proposed up there by Vernon.
I do like the word acquire because it has more shades of meaning, including to buy. So I think I like that. It gives more options, you know.
Okay with that too, Vernon? Acquire instead of purchase.
Yeah, I can take out purchase or it is make the A one capital A and then we good. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the motion and the second. Yeah. So any further discussion on this particular action? Not looking at the text below that. Brian?
Just to clarify, it's only the first paragraph?
Yes, the first sentence. Any objections? Wayne? Okay, take a vote. Those in favor of the sentence starting with acquire wetland parcels? Yeah, the first sentence. Please raise your hand. And then those opposed? Okay, I find this passed. And now on to the second part there, which is proposed by Cody. Further discussion? Daniel? Actually, was there a second?
I think we need a second.
Second by Daniel, okay.
For discussion purposes.
So again, this is not a concrete step like the previous one. This is explore the feasibility.
Chair, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read it out loud. So sometimes it helps not only seeing it, but hearing what it looks like, right?
Yep.
Explore the feasibility of obtaining conservation easements or purchasing through negotiation or under the threat of condemnation wetlands, including but not limited to gulches, continuous, intermittent, and ephemeral streams, stream beds, and floodplains, and other flood-prone parcels.
And again, I just want to point out this falls on Vernon's shoulders as a member of the Conservation Preservation Committee. He's the one who's going to be doing that. Discussion, Wayne?
Jackie, when is that wetland study scheduled to be completed?
365 days from the enactment of the bill, October 4th. Discussion? Any objections? Brian?
Not an objection, just a question. Since we changed purchase in the first one, should we change purchase through negotiations to acquire? All right, let me rephrase that. I'd like to make a friendly amendment to change purchase to acquire, if that would be accepted.
Is that okay with you, Vernon? Cody? Yeah, okay. And Daniel, yes. Okay, any objections? Wayne?
I'm afraid that this precedent that we're setting tonight is going to have an effect. And if that study is done, and people that own land, their lands are so designated as wetland, then we as government are going to have to deal with the precedent that we're setting. Thank you.
So the wetlands bill does not say that wetlands must be acquired. It says that the committee may propose that they be acquired. Vernon?
Yeah, because too bad we don't have the wetland overlay plan. And so that's why it's kind of like stuck, because we're going to implement something and cross our fingers and our legs kind of thing. which, I mean, I'm okay with it, but, you know, it would be nice if we had an overlay plan or something, but that's gonna come later.
Brian?
Could we not then include the fact or something around the nature that it's based on the results of the study?
The bill does not actually say that. The bill says that the Conservation Committee may propose acquisition. It doesn't say that it has to be based on the overlay map. So by law, the committee can propose it regardless.
Right, but I guess for the purpose of this, though, at least kind of boxes it in a little bit more. The committee can always go above and beyond, but at least it kind of, I think to Wayne's point, that it doesn't open up the full can of worms of every single thing that potentially gets deemed as a wetland is, or could be, gets kind of lumped into the process, or into this, that it does kind of tighten the box a little bit. But again, the committee can then always decide to go above and beyond if they decide to want to do that.
Everett, you had a comment or no? Bernard?
Yeah, I was following Brian on down. So here we are, you know, CPAC. We're gonna put kind of like what we like, but then maybe the committee might look above and beyond this. Will that kind of stuff happen, Jackie? Like say we hearing from our CPAC members, I'm gonna put in there, and then when we reconvene as Conservation Planning Committee, we might have hierarchy over this language. See that happening? I don't know. Hey, Brian, you might want to repeat that one.
I'll help you. So I think what I was saying is that if we added into this that explore the feasibility of obtaining conservation easements, based on the study, that at least it kind of boxes in a little bit for this purpose, but the committee themselves could go above and beyond. They could say, great, you guys met this task, but we think that we want to go purchase or acquire these other areas, that they would have the authority to be able to do so. They wouldn't be boxed out from being able to do that.
I don't understand why you would want to limit the committee be further beyond what's limited in the law. It seems like the law is intended for that purpose, to give them the authority to do this, to propose these things. And even if they propose it, the mayor doesn't have to adopt it. It just says that they will propose to the mayor. Why shouldn't they be allowed to propose whatever they feel is right?
What I'm saying I'm saying the committee would have more authority, that if ours was boxed in slightly, so it at least had some kind of basis to why the decisions are being made, the committee could then say, we think those aren't in the report, we would think these 10 areas should be purchased or acquired, that they could then make that happen. So we're actually we're not trying to limit them by any means. At least that's not what my intent was. I was trying to say, it almost gives it a fail-safe that we have our definition, but they then still have the right to still go above and beyond to do further protection if they feel that that's appropriate because something didn't come up in the study or somehow there was a loophole or something that was gotten around. They have the ability to then say, nope, we still want to go after this even though it's not part of the study. That was my intent, at least.
I think the language that's up there is a superset. So what you're proposing is actually a reduction of scope. You're reducing the scope to only being able to operate within the bounds of the future overlay map, right?
Right, because I guess I was taking into account what Jackie was saying is that we could end up suggesting that we're going to buy all of South Kihei, or all of Kihei, or all of South Maui.
It's only wetlands. The ordinance says only wetlands. Karen?
This says explore the feasibility. So you're just exploring it. It's not saying you have to do it. It's not like the one before that's saying to do it. It's just saying explore the feasibility. I don't think this is like, it's pretty.
Yeah, I can see, I agree with Karen. If it said, we will acquire everything that the overlay map says are wetlands, that would be different. But that's not what it says. Jackie?
So the way things work, generally speaking, is that this Conservation Planning Committee that we were referring to, they get their marching orders from the Maui County Code that impaneled them. It's probably in Title II, and so they're going to be looking at that when they look at possibly purchasing properties. Now, if they do recommend a property and the mayor adds it to the capital improvement budget, we would certainly, as a department, when it comes to us for review, compare those parcels against this wetland map that we are going to be getting this fall. And so there could be properties that are not within the wetlands map, but maybe there's other reasons to purchase it. But we would be having, it's the way things work and who follows what kind of varies depending on what agency or department or group you're talking about. So that's how it would work. Thanks.
Okay. Further discussion? Brian?
So I guess I'm just asking you, did the friendly amendment to add the context of based on the study, was that not accepted? And if not, that's fine. I just want to make sure that if it is accepted, it's accepted. If it's not, it's not.
Yes. Accepted.
Daniel?
Is that what you said, Brian?
Yes, thank you.
Further discussion? Pardon? He did. Daniel did. Yeah. Yeah. Any objections? Say it again.
I was just going to say you're missing the acquiring part.
Okay, are you ready? Any objections? Lewa?
So, Rob, I think I understand what you're saying about it's actually making it a bit less than when he had made that motion, which I support as well. But maybe can add in other supporting, explore the feasibility of obtaining the areas identified through the wetlands mapping study and other supporting studies or supportive studies, because now it's just saying just using that, right? Which that's not the intent. But as I read it, that's what it sounds like. And that's what Rob was saying. It's now sounding more restrictive than what it was without it. So try to read it one more time because you got to put something else in there to say other and other studies.
It is more restrictive than the law. I think that's the intent, right? I mean, like for practical purposes, for example, it means that Vernon can't and the committee can't propose anything until the overlay map is done.
Because it's saying, or other studies, which studies that have been done, right? If you say or, you don't have to wait for one. You can use any existing studies. You don't have to wait until the time that it's approved, right? You don't have to wait for that. But I know you're identifying it just to be supportive, but it's not making them wait. It's just using that. If it comes, it comes, and use everything else that they have in place already.
Right. I would completely agree, and that's why I was asking the question, that the committee could certainly identify something that is outside of any study that we've put in here, and they could say, we think this is important, and we go forward, and that we wouldn't be precluding them from doing that. That's what I want to make sure we weren't doing. So I'm fine with other studies as being included. That's no problem. But that would be your friendly amendment now.
Okay, so that was another proposal for an amendment. So is that okay with you, Cody?
Yeah.
And Daniel?
C.
Okay. Okay, so we have a, okay, everyone, I hope can read that, the new language. So any objections? Okay, I find we have adopted this additional action. And thereby, we will take a 5-minute break and resume with actions.
Chair, may I
topic 3.
suggest a slightly longer break because I know some people are going to be eating.
7 minutes is proposed. Okay, 7 minutes. Okay, resuming the meeting at 6:54 p.m. And I believe that we are at action 3.07. We left off, we finished 3.06 last time. So 3.07 sounds kind of familiar language here. Develop an inventory of natural and cultural resources and practices within South Maui impacted by sea level rise, along with preservation and management plans. Moved by Everett, second by Mike. Discussion? Any objections? We've adopted 3.07. 3.08, analyze the shoreline access inventory within South Maui to identify areas that will be impacted by sea level rise and where connectivity and access can be improved. Use findings to identify solutions to preserve access. And then from Natalie Harco, we have slightly tighter language proposed. Analyze and maintain the shoreline access inventory within South Maui to identify and preserve areas that will be impacted by sea level rise, and where connectivity and access to the shoreline can be connectivity and access to the shoreline as well as along the shoreline, lateral access can be improved. Use findings to identify and implement solutions to preserve access, including relocating coastal trails. So again, that's not a motion. The motion is 3.08, which is up on the screen. So do we have or it's not a motion, but that's a proposal from the planning department. Do we have a motion for either of those?
Chair. Daniel.
Oh, Daniel. Long way around. Go ahead.
I actually like the proposed language. Natalie. I mean, it's very similar to the 3.08 draft language, but I like the additional words that are added. Anyway, I'll make a motion to adopt that Natalie's proposed language.
Second by Mike. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, fine. We've adopted the language proposed by Natalie. Analyze and maintain. 3.09, update the 2016 Community Wildfire Protection Plan for South Maui. And again, she also proposes a slight tightening of the language there, and require that developments comply with the plan. I have to say I have not read the Community Wildfire Protection Plan for South Maui. Daniel?
I recall Chief Ventura talking about the 2016 Community Wildfire Protection Plan that he felt it was adequate for current needs. So if you're looking for a motion, I'll make a motion to adopt the language.
Which language?
3.09, is that where we are?
With or without the Natalie's addition?
I'm sorry, I must be missing something. Oh,
And require that development.
sorry, I was just looking at the paper in front of me. Sorry.
And require that developments comply with the plan.
Okay, let me see. I see. Okay, yeah. All right, I'll propose that. I'll make a motion for that
Is there a second?
as it's on the screen.
Second by Mike. Discussion? Brian?
Maybe this is a dumb question, but don't we already require it if the problem is the enforcement?
We should.
I mean, I would think that they would be required. So
The county does. That's why the fire chief said he doesn't need it.
So are you proposing a change? Or?
I think, yes, I think I would make a friendly amendment to strike require that developments comply and put in and enforcement is adhered to.
Enforce again?
Is adhered to, or I'm thinking off the top of my head here. But it's more, to me, it's more about the enforcement versus the saying that they have to do it, because we say it now and they don't do it.
I see.
So planning, can you help with suggestions on?
I think you could probably just say enforce instead, and enforce that developments comply with the plan. That was a proposed amendment. Okay with Daniel? Okay with Mike? Okay.
Hang on, can we hear what Everett has to say?
Oh, Everett?
If it's going to be included, I would say, and enforce that landowners comply with the plan. It's not just development, it's just landowners, period.
Enforce that landowners comply with the plan.
Right.
Okay with Daniel?
Okay, I accept the friendly amendments.
Mike? Okay. Further discussion?
Chair, did you want to skip the new fire station policy that was requested by the chief?
Why don't we finish this action before we go on to policies?
Sorry, that's an action. It's right above it.
Okay, why don't we finish this one first? Any further discussion? Any objections? I find we've adopted the Community Wildfire Protection Plan action. 3.10, develop a comprehensive wildfire data set and a GIS layer that includes the acreage. I know, but I have it in different order. It includes the acreage, years, and location of wildfire events in South Maui to assist in resilient land use planning. Obtain annual funding for a program to ensure continuing coordination, including collection and maintenance of post-incident data. So this sounds very useful to me, but when I asked Fire Chief Ventura when he was here whether this would help, he said no. He says he doesn't need this. He said they check and take care of hotspots anyway. So I'm not sure who would take advantage of this, if not the Fire Chief. So,
Then I would make a motion to strike it or not include it. If he's saying we don't need it, I mean.
or maybe Planning Department can explain who would make use of this, if not the Fire Chief?
Chair.
Brian?
If I recall correctly, he was saying, I think he said that he was building this already, and that what we were looking to add in was the historical landmarks that they would need to know, so that they could have the full database, so that when they were going to address the hot spots, that they knew that this was a specific area that they needed to do something different with, or that's my recollection of what this was. So personally, I wouldn't strike it. I think it would almost be adding on to the historical components so that it's that extra layer of the cultural respect.
Well, he said no. He said no GIS layer and no plans for it. But, and we could, I don't know. I'm not sure what the purpose would be if we don't have an implementer. Doesn't make sense, I think, to assign a task to someone who doesn't want it. Daniel?
Thank you, Chair. I did watch some of that meeting with Chief. I didn't listen to all the discussion, but part of it, we talked about South Maui wildfires. It says he can pull data from their everyday records management system. It's in the system that they can pull it, that each district knows where their hotspots are, and that they do keep an eye on those hotspots. And then he said that, at least the part I heard, talking about that he'd be willing to work with GIS. So what I got from that, and like I said, I didn't listen to everything. What I got from that, they already have the database, and the GIS could map the database, I guess, put it on a map. And I wasn't sure whether or not he'd be happy doing that or not. But that's what I got from it. And the other part of the discussion I think Brian is alluding to is about having a database that will enhance their knowledge of where historic and cultural sites are found, that they can plug into their database. So when they fight a fire on undeveloped land, for example, they have an idea of where these historic properties are. Otherwise, the chances of these properties being destroyed by firefighting are very high. And so I brought up the suggestion of using the cultural overlay, that ever happens, as a database that they could use in firefighting. And he was very agreeable to doing that. So that's kind of what I remember from not only watching it, but the discussion.
So you want to change it from a wildfire data set and GIS layer into the cultural overlay?
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to recommend doing the cultural overlay. I think it's really up to the chief as to whether or not he wants to do a GIS mapping. I mean, he can if he wants to. They have the data, but I think we could just leave it up to the fire department to choose to do that or not. So that's my take on the current, what's there currently.
Sure.
And I don't know if in this or in a separate motion, yeah, I would definitely recommend providing some sort of GIS cultural overlay and providing that to the fire department.
Brian?
My suggestion would be is that we keep this, because the fire chief currently may not think that he needs this, but in 10 years we may have a different fire chief that have a different perspective, or that the lay of the land could be completely different for how wildfires are hitting us. So I think at least having it in, the option could be that they don't have to do it if he feels he doesn't need it, but at least we can say we put it in there to say you should do it. But I would agree that I think probably doing the cultural layover is probably a separate action, would be my recommendation, if Daniel, you'd be okay with that?
There is no motion right now. Do you want to make a?
Well, so I guess we can make the motion for this. So I'll move to accept this as written, and then we can, if there's a second, we can then do the other motion.
I think that's a great idea, and I thought about that too. The only thing is that since actions are actually reviewed every year and reported on, someone's going to have to say next year, well, we didn't actually obtain annual funding. We didn't actually develop this comprehensive wildfire data set because it was not desired. Yeah. Is there a second for that motion? Jennifer? Okay.
Chair Rob.
Gilkey?
Second, yeah. So we're open for discussion. Okay, so I struggle with something where I live, and it's not, it's kind of off subject, on subject. It's not as much to do with the cultural. So let me try and gather my thoughts and explain something. So as many of you may know, I read an article recently that the Pohakea watershed projects are approved, and they're going to be moving forward with restoration up in the watershed. So that whole mountainside, as many of you may know historically, is a bad fire zone. And when I think of the restoration, I don't obviously start from the top, but as you work your way down, there's things I believe can be done below that watershed, all the way down to the foothill level. Now, it would be, this is in the ways of fire prevention, but what links me to it is, you know, the phrase about assisting in resilient land use planning, because what I would like some of you to do is think back 15, 20 years of what that mountainside looked like, the fires that that area has had to endure. The last two threatened our homes along Ma'alaya Bay Place. And what those fires have done is completely just killed all the kiawe. And I know kiawe is invasive, but a tree is better than no tree in my eyes. There's not much else that can grow up there but kiawe. There's no kiawe left to provide any kind of cover for some of the native shrubs that are still up there. So what I'm struggling with is, like, if the causes of these fires, I believe it's not proven, but it's been suspect for years, Maui Electric, right? The power lines. Why do the wildfires always happen when it's blazing wind? Because the lines arc and they cause these fires. So I guess my challenge is, how can we implement something that's along the lines of using the data? I know it's hard because I'm kind of pointing fingers at Maui Electric, but if it's the cause, then I have no other choice, yeah? You're doing all these restoration efforts only to have it nulled by a fire. A fire can destroy years of work in one swoop. And there's been some bad ones, you guys know that, yeah? One of the bad ones started near I don't know how many years ago, but it started near that coconut shack. You guys remember that one? That one was bad. That one reached past my house. So, yeah. Well, it went up and then down. So, resilient land use planning, that's where I connect my thoughts to this. Any help would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Separate action, incorporated, I don't know, but we have to be able to prevent things that are almost proven to be the cause, right? We have all these efforts for preservation only to get wiped out by fires. I know a couple years ago, Kaho'olawe had a pretty bad one on the Kirk side. They lost some work that was done, they lost, and man, that's a step backwards, boy. So I'm struggling with that. That mountainside needs help. If Maui Electric is a cause, then what is the solution? Food for thought.
Any further discussion on this motion? Lehua?
A question for Kyoki. So, I'm sorry, Kyoki, just so I can understand. So, you don't support this, or you like this?
I support it.
Yeah. So maybe you can add in the acreage, year, and location, and maybe
Work towards
acreage, year, location, and cause,
prevention, yeah.
or the cause of the fire.
yeah.
To be put in that data.
Sure.
I mean, I would assume
Because that
would-
is what's going to
Yeah.
support.
I would assume it
prevention.
would be in here, but if you would just put that, so I'm trying to understand
Right.
what it is, so the cause of it.
Yeah.
So if you want to put that word in there, that would support that.
Yeah, and that's the purpose. Sorry it was kind of long and drawn out, you guys, but I was hoping for this, and mahalo. Lehua, so.
Make the proposal.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I struggle with on that side. When I picture preservation, I mean, it all goes for naught if we don't stop the causes of some of these fires. Maui has had some bad ones over the years.
So do you accept that amendment to add cause acreage, et cetera? And Jennifer? Okay. Good to cause acreage, year, and location. Further discussion?
If I
Brian?
could add a friendly amendment to my own motion. At the very end, where we're talking about collection and maintenance of post-incident data, I would like to add and provide recommendations for future prevention or something along that lines, because it's great if we collect the data, but if we don't actually utilize the data to implement something, some change, then the data is kind of useless.
Thank you, Brian.
Jennifer?
No, that brainstorm is what I appreciate. That's why I threw it out there. I knew collectively we would kind of get on the same page. It's a large area. Need help. It needs help.
So obviously, I'm accepting my friendly amendment.
Yeah. And Jennifer,
Thank you.
too. Further discussion? Any objections? Okay, fine, we've adopted that 3.10. Then we have a new one proposed by Natalie. Build a new fire station, Mauka of Pi'ilani Highway, outside the sea level rise exposure area, extreme tsunami inundation zone, shoreline erosion hazard line, and SMA to address increased call volume and improve emergency response time. So we had a policy for this, but this actually is an action, so I think it makes sense to have it as an action. Is there a motion? Motion by Lehua, second by Everett. Discussion? Any objections? Daniel?
I think this was to replace the Kihei Fire Station on South Kihei Road. Right? Because it's in the Silarexa.
That's right.
Watching the video of the chief earlier today, he did say that he would like to see the fire station located north from the R&T part to maybe down to Ohukai and not south towards the existing Wailea fire station. So it needed to be more in North Kihei. Yes, Makapi'ilani, but more in North Kihei, the North Kihei area, if possible. I don't know if you could put something in there to reflect what he was hoping to see happen.
Kyoki?
Yeah, no, just quick comment. Yeah, I agree with Daniel. Because obviously the old fire station was the only fire station in Kihei. So it's kind of outlived its location, yeah, as far as proximity and response. So yeah, I agree with Daniel on that location as far as what they were kind of brainstorming and proposing. Thank you.
So North Kihei, or do you want to be even more specific? Karen?
I worked with the chief on this policy. To be very specific is not going to be helpful. You want to let the fire department find the land. Yes, he did say he wants it to be in the North Kihei area, so being a little bit more broad is actually more helpful than being like, we would like it on TMK.
Yeah.
Daniel?
Agreed. Yep.
Let me see. In the North Key area. Yes, that's fine. I accept that friendly amendment from wherever it came from.
I think, didn't we have a motion from Daniel on this? Yeah.
Did I make a motion? No, I didn't make the
You
motion.
didn't make a motion. Okay,
I'm
no
just
motion.
talking off of the
Okay.
side of my face.
You want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the language that's on the screen right now under new. It's called new. That's my motion.
North Key area, if possible. Okay. And Brian seconds. Any discussion? Objections? Okay, fine, we've adopted this new fire station action. 3.11, develop a community-based disaster preparedness plan for South Maui that includes consideration of Maui Emergency Management, I forget what the A stands for, hazard mitigation plan to create a proactive disaster coordination framework. Moved by Everett, second by Tova. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, fine, we've adopted 3.11. 3.12, develop a long-term post-disaster recovery and reconstruction plan with priority actions for South Maui that incorporates findings and recommendations from vulnerability assessments. And Natalie proposes slightly different wording, from assessments of the vulnerability of social, economic, and environmental infrastructure. So changing assessments to assessments of the vulnerability of social, economic, and environmental infrastructure. Do we have a motion for one or the other?
This one seems so broad that it seems worthless to me. I mean, it's when you start imagining all the different possibilities of disasters, and where those what part of South Maui that could be impacted, and then recovery and reconstruction just seems so broad that it's just to me it's just worthless. It's a exercise that could go on forever. I mean, you can just dream up disasters forever and where they might occur and what they might impact, and I don't see a lot of value in this policy.
You don't think we should prepare for the zombie apocalypse? Karen, can you explain what this is intended for?
To plan ahead for disasters instead of being reactive, being proactive in your planning.
Tova and then Daniel.
When I read it, I hear the called for response to, instead of just springing back and replacing stuff that's been damaged with exactly what was there, having the plans in place so that when we're in that emergency rebuild mode, we don't do something that isn't forward thinking. I mean, a recent example of this was some of the wetland cleanout stuff that happened. It was like, okay, it was a disaster response, but it wasn't done in a way that felt like it was in concert with the needs of the community or the cultural or environmental resources. So for me, I mean, I agree it could go on forever and ever, and hopefully one would assume that you would have a limited scope, a limited capacity, and prioritization of what seems like it's on deck would naturally fall out with the frequency of the types of disasters we're having come. But I think failing to plan ahead is failing to have a plan. And we know stuff's going to happen, and we need to get ahead of it. And this is, I think, speaking to that when I read it, that's what I'm thinking.
Do we have a motion? Daniel?
I just have a comment. So, MEMA, which is what, Maui Emergency Management Agency? So I can't imagine they're not doing this already. So, because that's their job. It's what they do. I can't imagine they don't have a plan. So I really think what this action is all about is funding, getting funding for working on the plan in more detail. I think that's why that's in there. It's about getting funding for it. So, how much funding? $150,000. That's my comment.
Okay, last opportunity. Is anyone going to make a motion or to move on? Motion by Tova, second by Mike. Discussion. Everett?
Tova, I think your point is covered in 3.12.
Yeah, we're on 312. We already adopted 311. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any objections?
Can we have who firsted and seconded again?
Say it again?
Who was the first and who was the second?
Okay, any objections? Cody?
So who would be conducting these vulnerability assessments?
Looks like Mima.
Okay.
Any objections? Okay, fine, we've adopted 3.12 as written. 3.13, identify additional emergency evacuation routes in and out of South Maui. And Natalie, proposal extension there. Identify and secure public access to additional emergency evacuation routes in and out of South Maui to adequately accommodate the de facto population. So do we have a motion for one or the other?
I move as is.
Moved by Everett, as is. Is there a second? Second by Vernon. Discussion. Daniel?
So Chief Ventura said that Ulapalakua Ranch and Haleakala Ranch are willing to provide emergency access, emergency evacuation routes for South Maui, that the fire department has already spoken to them and that they would do that. Just FYI, he said that when he was here. He pointed that out to us.
So we can save 50,000.
Further discussion? Any objections? Tova?
So something that I've heard from community members is it's not just the routes in and out, it's that a lot of Kihei is made up of a series of stops that don't connect. Like there's a lot of areas where the north-south collector road, because it doesn't exist, becomes a point where no one can get out. They only can access through South Kihei Road. This is only speaking to that in and out of the whole side of the island. I'm wondering whether we need to modify the language to accommodate those other smaller parts. Do we feel like that's embedded in this language already, or it needs to be explicit that people can get out those other ways?
I think we covered that in the transportation section.
Yeah, we'll be getting back to transportation again after this. So. Yeah, this is particularly about emergencies, emergency evacuation. Any objections? Go ahead, Randall.
Not really an objection, just a question. I was wondering if it made sense to include communicate these routes in and out of South Maui.
So Everett agrees. And Tova?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to clarify, when I'm talking about people not being able to get off their block, I'm talking about in emergencies. There's a gate that prevents them from leaving other than one way. So in my mind, that very much qualifies to be under the emergency section. Don't ask me for the language, but I think it's an unneed. It's an unmet need in emergencies right now.
Okay, so identify and communicate. Okay. Brian?
If I could make a friendly amendment that it's a multi-channel communication. So multi-channel could be through radio, through text, through email, through smoke signals, pick your flavor. But I wouldn't want us to rely on one single communication method, because as generations evolve, people's technology skills and how they access information is going to be very different. And I think you need to kind of keep multiple elements within the plan, because someone that's going to be 90 is not going to necessarily be waiting for their phone to send them a text saying, hey, get out. They're going to rely on different sources. So.
Vernon?
So our family, we just started to get used to it, ham radios. And strategically, north and south, we have families that that the communication part would help. That we can let people in certain areas or near Aupua that traffic out of north is not happening. Maybe we got to go this way. So in our family, we implemented our own emergency plan. I using Oprah's gate. Well, you guys all go that way. Because I can tell you, when I go in this way, there's no traffic. When everybody going that way, it's all locked up, going up by the power plant and Mokulele, yeah? And so I get my bolt cutter for the car, and my big truck, no need the bolt cutter, I just run her gate over, and then deal with trespassing later. But if we're saving lives, I think that all get washed up. So, I think Mike, I think Kelly started something with maybe even Tina Wildberger on some kind of a South Maui emergency plan. I think they had like one agency set up here and talk about it. I think we gotta relive talking about that, because our traffic, even with North-South Collector Road, if it was open today, everything's still going bottleneck at going up the Malaya Junction and at the mill especially, yeah. So, but no one talking about exiting this way and going past Daniel Kanahele's house and that back road up there, right? So we can figure this out eventually.
You can sleep over there. And Hua?
To support what Tova's said, and if I'm hearing it correctly, if we could add something in with the wording of with an emphasis on vulnerable areas that have restricted egress. I think that's what you're saying. And I think that's important to have that. But I know this is going longer than probably what it was intended to. But I do want to support what Tova's saying, because I agree there's so many areas that, I mean, that it's hard to get out, let alone get in, but getting out going to be impossible. So if we make have an emphasis on that, identifying those restricted egress areas.
I wonder if it wouldn't be better to make it 2 actions, though, just because this is so important, that our bottlenecks in getting in and out of South Maui. It's kind of important to highlight. So I wonder if it shouldn't be 2 actions then, because this is so important, being able to get in and out of South Maui. It's been, I mean, we've been so close to disaster with the fires that we had a couple of years ago.
Well, I would support that, making 2 actions. So, Tova, do you want to?
Yeah, 2 actions would be great. And also a comment on the language as amended. We're now identifying multiple channels rather than identifying additional emergency evacuation routes. So I'd like to suggest we reorder it so that the identification is about the emergency evacuation routes. I might put that at the end there, yeah.
Can I say something, Chair?
Right here. Yes.
So identify additional emergency. Can you say identify all emergency evacuation routes rather than additional? I mean, I don't know if that's just wording, but.
I think the point here is we need more,
Yeah.
more than what we have. Not just identifying the ones we have,
Yeah.
but we actually need more. Because we were, like I said, got really close to disaster during that big fire about
Only because I
2.5 years
think
ago.
additional is like 1 or 2, I mean 2. So if you do all, I mean, go for broke, all, like where Vernon going, we're going to add that one.
So, Chair.
Brian?
I would agree with Lihu in the all part. I think the identify is still important, because if we only have kind of one way in, one way out, so it's creating the additional, but I think the communication is all communication exits. So I agree with you. I would just put the all when it comes to provide multi-channel communications for all exit strategies. So that way we're not losing the emphasis of identifying new ones.
So let's see. Did you make the original motion, or who was that? Who made the original motion? Everett did. Is it okay with you, Everett? Yep. And who seconded? Is that Tova? Okay, that. Okay, so dealing with just this part, the 3.13. Any objections? So fine, we've adopted 3.13 as written on the screen there. So are we considering an additional action now about the internal block points? Want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for an additional action, something along the lines of identify additional emergency evacuation routes out of dead-end neighborhoods. Okay, that sounds bad. Someone help me out. I don't have COVID. I did test. I just have little sniffles in case you're worried. Limited egress. Yeah, okay. Areas with limited egress.
I second that.
Chair. Over here.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you, Tova, for bringing it up. I grabbed the mic and I put it down because I was a little hesitant to add my manao on something that pertains to our little neighborhood down there in Maui at Haole Street. So when the chief was here, I asked him about any plans, because the old road that used to connect through, it was HCNS, now it's Maipono. It used to come out by the power plant. That was kind of a unofficial, rip route if you had to get out of Haole Street. So at the beginning of this action, I thought if you just added some language, it might have covered that. And I was looking at, try to go back down, Karen? A little bit. Back down. No, the other way. The other down. A little bit more. So I can see, okay. So identify additional and or new emergency evacuation routes. Wouldn't that kind of cover what you were kind of? No. Kind of, sort of, but not really.
No, because the in-out
Right.
part is big and needs to be separate.
Yeah.
It's the neighborhood basis.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to like, I'm trying to think of like, don't want the need for Hawaii to be so specific to there, because there's other places that are like that. So I want it to be more broad, okay?
Because I'm familiar with that, before you could go through that area, when you was stuck in traffic, we used to go through.
Yeah, yeah.
But, so if you do limited and restricted, because it's technically it's a restricted
Yeah.
exit, so.
Yeah, it
that-
doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, so therefore it's restricted, but it is there per se, I mean, because
Yeah.
we know it's supposed to be there.
Yeah.
So if you say that they have to identify, that means they gotta do something.
Sure.
And it should, because that's considered a
Yeah.
restricted area. So
Yeah.
therefore, they would have to make it accessible if it is
Yeah.
indeed supposed to be used for that purpose.
Yeah, and that's why I was wondering if just the word additional was enough to cover that without the language that I just kind of thought of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, like,
because
for
right
the-
now, Holy Street, only one way in, one way out.
Yeah.
Unless you jump in the ocean.
So that's why I'm supporting it by putting routes out of areas with limited and restricted egress.
yeah.
Because, I mean, they're kind of the same, but they're kind of not. But specifically for Hawley Street, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's a restricted
Yeah, thank you.
exit.
Tova, did you want it to be identify additional and restricted emergency evacuation routes, or did you want the restricted where it is right now? I meant Lehua.
So I wonder if this really is a matter of routes, or if it isn't things like gates and blockages. Because, I mean, from an internal area within Kihei, for example, we're probably not going to establish a new route. We just need to open up the blockages that are already there. So is that right? We're not creating new routes out of the middle of Kihei, I wouldn't think. That's going to be hard to do.
I'm so sorry, Rob. Between the horrible acoustics and background noise, couldn't quite catch that. I didn't catch what you just said. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I think getting out of the middle of Kihei, for example, is not the same thing as creating a new evacuation routes from Kihei. I think what you're talking about is not creating new routes. It's about removing blockages like gates, dead-end streets, things like that. So that's a little bit different from creating a new evacuation route.
Yes, I agree. They will be evacuation routes. I agree with how you said it. So if you have language that you think more clearly hones in on that, please propose.
But if you're going to identify new routes, because there has to be new routes to be identified. I mean, we need more routes. And so maybe not all have been identified. So I would say to additional or new. I mean, if that's what, you didn't want to use the word new routes?
I just think that in most places, it's not going to be possible to establish a new route from central Kihei. I mean, from central, south, or north. But I think that there are blockages. There are like gates and roads that are closed off, things like that could be changed so that it would be possible to use them for emergencies.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what was Tova's original concern.
Okay, that's what I consider like new, because they weren't known to be, so they're considered new, not necessarily built, but it's a new area, a new route that we weren't told of.
I think Mike has a suggestion.
Well, I just wanted to point out, when these type of issues come up, I think of in central Kihei, like there's a series of streets around Honani that they're only one way in and out in South Kihei Road. And for years, some of the residents, I can remember back when Arakawa was running for office, they wanted that impediment moved that would allow them access to what's the north-south collector road corridor. And they said, at least in a tsunami, we have no way out. We have to go towards the tsunami to get out. So just removing those blockades, and of course that was a political time, and both candidates said, yes, vote for me and I'll get those things removed. And of course they're still there, and those people are still in that same deadly situation for a narrow, congested street with a lot of parking, that it's almost like a one-lane road already, and they would have no way out. With a vehicle, I guess you could run if you could. That wouldn't prevent you from getting out, but if you're trying to escape a tsunami. So I think Rob's point is and rather than creating new routes, it's just opening up those. There are routes there if we remove the impediments to them. So I think that's what Rob is alluding to. Thank you.
That's why I said restricted egress. So those would be restricted. So that's why I had put that word in there, because they're restricted, they're limited, and then the new ones is for the new properties that maybe I don't know. Like I get places in my head that I know I would take my family that maybe is not identifiable. But so that's what I mean by identifying new ones with the new built, places that are being built. So all three I think would suffice.
Brian?
Did we not cover this with our policies with transportation? Didn't we say that one of the priorities was that they were to remove all the blockages to open up the streets? So I guess the question of planning, are we being redundant, or should this belong here, or should we tie it back to transportation? Because I think it's an important thing, but if we already have it someplace, then...
Policies affect future actions. This is about affecting the current state of the affairs. Do we want something to change or not?
So policies would be if somebody comes in for a permit, then you can say open that gate. But until that point, the gate can be locked.
So I guess I'll go back to actions on when we were doing transportation, because I thought we covered opening those up in that, but maybe...
There is one about emergency egress and ingress throughout South Maui.
Yeah. I'm fine having it here too. I just wanted to remind everybody that I think we have it tied in a different place as well.
Okay, so let's see. Where are we at in terms of a motion for this? Tova moved. Do we have a second? Second by Lehua. Oh, Jennifer second? You get it next time, Lehua. Go ahead, Tova.
It sounds like the holdup is this confusion of adding additional emergency evacuation routes when really it's more descriptive to say perhaps remove impediments, identify areas where impediments to emergency evacuation need to be removed in areas with limited and restricted egress, right? Because both the stories that you shared, Rob and Mike as well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like you have to go towards danger, and that we shouldn't have that.
It's just removed for emergency evacuation. The additional is not needed. That's they're just blockages right now. And then, yeah.
Chair.
Yeah.
It may be a separate action, but should we include, either as a separate action or in here, a plan to actually have them removed? Because it's great to say that we want them removed, but in the middle of an emergency, do we have a plan to execute against?
Tova?
Yes. Let's identify it, and then let's, operationalize.
Right. I guess that's where I was going, because we could say, here's all the areas it has to be removed, but if they need to be removed and we don't have a plan to do so, then that doesn't help us at all. So that would be a friendly amendment.
I don't know what you want after operationalize.
And you think I do?
You could simplify that language quite a bit. You could just say identify impediments to emergency evacuation and remove them.
Well, I think I would say it's a plan to operationalize or to execute. Yeah, pick your flavor, but
why not just remove them?
Well, I guess I'm assuming that they're there for a purpose when it's not an emergency. So I wouldn't be making the call to say just remove them because I don't know why they're actually there.
I think we all in the abstract would like them removed, but as the stories were shared, this is something that's been called for a long time, so there was clearly someone saying no. So, I mean, in some cases, I mean, it's okay if it has to stay locked when there's no emergency, but then have someone on the CERT team have a key and have them have a backup and have someone be responsible. Like, have a plan. Don't have disaster and no plan and everyone's stuck.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Karen.
Mind readers here. Okay, so this is okay with the, yeah, okay. Any objections?
Can you read it out loud just so it's in the record?
The whole thing or just the friendly? Sorry? Just the friendly. So as a friendly amendment, add have a plan for implementation in case of an emergency.
Okay, any objections? Okay, I find we've adopted this new action on areas with impediments. Is it time for a 10-minute break? Okay, 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Have a seat. Resuming at 8 p.m. And we're okay, we're at 3.14, developer partner to create resiliency hubs appropriate for the South Maui community. Is there a motion? Motion by Keoki.
Sorry if this is a dumb question, but when I was reading this prior, Karen, real quick, like, what is a resiliency hub?
I am so happy you asked that question.
Okay.
I am so happy you asked.
I'm literally going to read the definition, but community serving facilities augmented to support residents and coordinate resource distribution and services before, during, and after a natural hazard event. So instead of just having an emergency shelter, it would serve even after, like, with people's needs. So Wyola Church in West Maui kind of is that.
Personally, I think it's a little fuzzy myself too. I mean, we have storm warnings, hurricane warnings, where the Kamal'i Elementary School functions as an emergency gathering place. People go there. But I'm still don't quite understand what the additional facilities are for a resiliency hub beyond what's there now. Tova?
So I have been to some of the meetings about these kinds of things, and my understanding from that is it goes beyond just having a place that you're evacuating to. It's this idea that the community gets together ahead of time and thinks about what you want. So you figure out how to put the resources together. Do you need charging stations? Should it be on solar? What are the number of beds that are there? How do you provide for food in the long run? It's like not opening a gym. It's planning ahead if we are really up a creek. How as a community have we figured out how to locate and stock and resource something that's going to keep us afloat if we're isolated from other services?
Chair, just a point of order.
Okay, Brian.
We should have a motion before we start discussions.
Oh, okay.
Motion to adopt is written.
Second.
Okay, motion by Tova, second by Brian. And then Vernon, a comment?
Following Tova. So FEMA just activated this, I wouldn't say like military. They came from South Carolina. And their job was to go to all our schools in Hawaii. And they came to like Lokelani Cafeteria, Kihei Elementary Cafeteria, and Kamali'i. So what they were doing is looking at like the CAF, the facility, and how it can sustain. So meaning there is plans to put generators at the schools, because you got to run the fridge, the walk-in fridge, the walk-in freezer, because the food, you don't want the food to waste. And there's some food there, but there's also talk about who's going to provide food to these facilities. So there is action involved. There is talk about even like solar, on these campuses that can sustain with solar energy. So that all just happened. So it's going around the state, and I think the feds is going to fund such a project. But as a community, the community is going to most likely be involved, what that means. So I think this is great for us, because then we can, we might want to like break things up as like ahopua, like who manage, who the po'o for that ahopua, so that we're not all over the place, yeah. But yep, something's in the works right now.
So konohiki for each resiliency hub. Just kidding. Discussion? Any objections? I find we have adopted the 3.14 as proposed. 3.15, plant native trees and ground covers appropriate for the microclimate along existing public rights-of-way and roads. So we actually have a very similar policy that we adopted. And I think that was, that was topic 2, goal 2. And it seems to me like if we're going to have an action, it should be specific and concrete, so we know if it's done or it's not done. But is there a motion? Motion by Vernon. Is there a second? Second by Kyoki. Okay, discussion? Kyoki.
When I read this, one word stands out: appropriate. I think that's an important word in this. I feel like there's been in the past planting inappropriately. Takes too much water in really dry areas, especially down in like Makena and stuff. We see water being used down there during dry times when upcountry is in drought. So I look at the word appropriate as important in this action.
Tova?
While I like any action that involves planting more trees, I'm wondering if this isn't already caught in other sections of the plan where it's getting into a lot more detail about what we're asking for. Under the resiliency and disaster preparedness section, this isn't kind of explicit enough to really be talking about how it's meeting that need. And I think we have expressed this elsewhere in the plan where it's more appropriately paired and articulated. So I would recommend to, well, I guess it doesn't matter, but yeah, perhaps we strike it here, knowing that it's captured somewhere else.
Brian?
So from long-range planning, is the intent of this to slow down certain types of disasters, or is that kind of the intent, that it's not just about beautification and restoration, but this is to kind of maybe slow down a fire or slow down whatever that disaster potentially is?
That would be part of the intent. It could also be moved to a different chapter, like the roads section. But the appropriate for the microclimate, should help reduce flooding, should help reduce fire. I think that's why it was put here.
So I think from my perspective in that context that it should be here, because what you might plant for more beautification on streets and roadways may be different than trying to do some type of prevention from fires and floods and things of that nature. So they think it could be two separate things.
Tova?
Just a devil's advocate you here. How in reading that action would you implement it so that it's achieving that goal?
Probably use some of the words I just said, but so I guess as a tentative friendly motion, because I'm going to ramble on and we can then craft it from there, but I would think we want to first identify the locations. So it would be identify the existing public rights of ways and roads, to plant native trees and ground covers appropriate for the microclimate, to mitigate possible disasters or something like that.
Cody?
I think this is another good opportunity to express the importance of our native seed banks. And every time I see the word plant this, plant that, I think it's always important to remember that we have native seed banks already in these areas. We just need the opportunity for them to come back. But a lot of these plants serve as those purposes, yeah, in dry areas. They may be burnt down, they may be flooded, but they're always able to return and come back to life and replenish the life of that land. In some of these dry areas, a plant that I've seen a lot is the ilima. But I think it's important that if we are going to follow through with this, that we add that language in there. Plant native trees and ground covers, establish our native and endemic seed banks as well.
What Cody said.
Chair.
Yes.
Hey, over here.
Over here.
Hey, Karen. So, resiliency and disaster. Would food security be in that lineup, you think? Okay, so, Alika Tai. Propose, that's who we like come talk story, yeah, eventually. We like invite somebody to go talk about this very thing, so next time. But a friend shared, you know, we in one tough situation for food security. So here we talk about native plants, you know, what would be great to be planning, you know, if we have to sustain is each aupua have X amount of ulu trees, breadfruit. They can handle different type of climates and sand, soil mixture. Why the ulu tree? Because they're hardy trees, plus they can help you know, we make materials out of it for human use, and then also the food. So that's why I was asking if this disaster preparation would also include food security. So if we talk in native plants, I mean that would be a nice vision down the road if we had quite a few of ulu trees in new development, or even the old projects or existing projects, if people would grow ulu. If that's for, would be that. We'd have food and stuff we can make as for us, human use.
I found the one we talked about before. It's 2.2.10. It says, include native trees and flora that are appropriate for the microclimate in parks, along streets, trails, and greenways, and throughout the community to provide shade, beauty, and reduce sediment runoff. So it's kind of similar, but it's more green space and urban environment oriented.
That's also a policy, whereas this is an action to say, find the place and do it.
Chair.
Brian?
So Vern, I like what you were just saying. I would say let's propose that as a separate action, because I think that's a really important one. I think where I'm reading this is more about mitigating disasters. So if there's some type of plant life or coverage that can slow stuff down, that's what this would focus about. I think what you just mentioned is a really important one that we should kind of call out, that food supply and that type of thing should be kind of be thought forward. So I would fully support that if you want to make that as a motion, a second one.
I just wanted to add to that when we had that last Kaula fire, and we went up there to help clean up, I noticed that the Willy Willy Grove on the side was the only thing that was still standing, and some of the a'ali'i. And I was kind of like amazed. I was like, wow, like everything around it was black, and the Willy Willies were still brown, you know. So that was pretty cool.
Okay, further discussion. Any objections? Okay, I've adopted 3.15 with those changes.
Was to mitigate potential disasters accepted as a friendly amendment? And who? Just want to be sure.
I don't remember who made the motion.
Okay, so it's up to you guys. Do you accept those changes?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Any objections? Okay, adopted 3.15 with those changes. 3.16.
Yeah, before we can, do we want to potentially do the motion that Vernon just mentioned, or do we want to table that for, I just don't want to lose track of it, that's all.
I'm tired. Kind of just. Oh, because this bugger, the bugger not spinning.
Karen's typing it for us.
Oh, Karen. Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, local motion, yeah, yes.
I second it.
Okay, motion by Vernon, second by Jennifer.
Yes. You don't even have to say anything. Go Karen.
Oh,
Okay, discussion?
native. Oh, yeah, you can.
Cody?
Maybe and propagation for native agroforestry. Native agroforestry kind of includes like food, clothing, shelter, medicine.
Is that consistent with the motion, Vernon? Okay, and Jennifer? Okay.
Could I make a friendly amendment?
Amendment from Brian, go ahead.
And Vernon, it goes on to what you were saying about that it could be for supplies or crafting of different items. So I wouldn't make it as just food security, that it could be for, I'm not going to use the right language, but building materials or things of that nature.
Yeah, just no other words yet. It's kind of like for human use, consumption,
Right.
materials, can be for clothing, footwear.
I don't think we have to spell them all out, but
It's kind of like multi-use of not only getting food, but from the same plant or tree, there's multiple use.
right. You,
Yep.
you could build a house with it, so to speak, or
So, the long-term vision is we plant, so like at Lokilani Intermediate School, we don't plant any plumerias or hibiscus. Everything is just full-on food. And that's where the homeless guys go shopping.
could I have the address, please?
That's, like crazy. We grow a lot of food. And so that's the idea.
So that would be my friendly amendment, is to add building or clothing materials, and building clothing materials.
How about the term practical use?
But if you're talking about food to eat, then it's probably not Native Hawaiian agroforestry, right?
Yeah. Brian, suggestion? How about
Yes.
the term practical use? That kind of covers
That's
a
perfectly
broad.
fine. I just wanted to make sure we weren't limiting it to just food.
Absolutely.
Tova?
I was going to say what you were going to say, Rob. Would we want to say canoe crops? Because my understanding is there's more canoe crops that are good to eat than native Hawaiian plants.
Cody, does Native Hawaiian agroforestry capture canoe plants, or is that the?
Usually does.
No.
You can add it in there anyway.
Is it okay with you guys, Vernon? Jennifer?
Yeah, I good. That one I good. That one too.
Yeah.
Yep. You good?
Okay.
So-
Any more- Brian?
Maybe one more friendly amendment, sorry guys. Do we want to put anything about a method of storage? Obviously not for some of the food, but if the other materials are available, that they could start being produced and kind of stored somewhere? Or is that getting too detailed? Not the food, I'm thinking more of the fact that if a tree comes down, that you can forage it, you can then actually, you need to store it somewhere, you might want to make sure that it's getting aerated out so it dries out, then you could actually move it into the phase of, now we're actually going to produce it and do something with it. So having kind of the facilities to do that versus just having stuff kind of lay there and not be able to be utilized. So it's kind of taking it a step further of just saying we have it, but then developing the storage place that as stuff can be harvested and maintained, that it's now put off there. But if you guys don't think that's important, that's okay. It's just an idea.
Maybe you can even put, to promote food security, practical use materials, etc. You can just go on and on. And I think as Hawaiians, you're not going to waste. I mean, not just as Hawaiians, but you can use many parts of something. But I don't think you have to start putting it in here, because we're just not going to waste what we can get from the plant, or the tree, or.
I guess I was just thinking though that if we don't have a plan for where we're going to store that stuff. So if we have a tree that comes down or needs to be taken down or falls down, you're going to have two choices. It's going to sit there and kind of go to the elements, or we can say, hey, let's put it in a location where we can then start doing what we need to so that we can actually start producing from it and getting, so that we're not being wasteful.
Yeah. So we have something already. I don't know if it's in an action or policy, but it was if a tree we're not going to dispose of it. We're going to give it to an artisan, a nonprofit, or for-profit. So I think we have that in place. Yeah. So, but I just know that would be part of this plan, is not to let anything to go to waste. But we already have that somewhere.
Well, I guess I think that that's slightly different, because that was more from a policy from developers, that if they needed to remove a tree, that we would say, hey, you have to first make sure you go to an artisan. I would see this being more of a county thing, where it wouldn't necessarily where we're taking a tree down. It's just the tree came to an end of life type of thing. And how do we make sure that we're not wasting that tree, and that we're, again, I might be diving too deep and thinking too far ahead, but I'm just trying to think of, how do we make sure we don't waste it? And it's just, I'm going to shut up.
Maybe develop a plan for long-term use with zero waste or something as the goal.
That works for me. Because hopefully we don't need it, but obviously over the years we can be foraging some of these things and be prepared so we have somewhat of a stockpile. I guess that's where I'm thinking, that hopefully we don't need it, but in 10 years, if we've had 10 years of being able to pull from it and draw from it, that we now have something kind of in place that we can kind of draw off of.
Yeah, I was thinking like you, but I don't know the words right now. Yeah, thinking the same way, but I just don't have language.
Okay, so this is okay with you, Vernon, that text?
Can you read it out loud, please?
And Jennifer?
Identify public areas to implement zero or agroforestry, focusing on canoe plants to promote food security, practical use materials, develop a long-term plan for use with zero waste.
Vernon?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Further discussion? Any objections? Okay, I find we've adopted this new additional action. Prioritize 3.16. Prioritize capital improvement projects designed to maximize resilience and provide multiple benefits for South Maui. That is the most, I don't know. It's a really, really abstract and immeasurable action. So I would suggest that someone either make a motion or make an alternative motion which is more specific. Let's just do good things with our money. How about that?
I move for discussion.
Second by Brian. Discussion?
I suggest we delete, put a period after resilience and delete the rest of the sentence.
You don't want the projects to have multiple benefits?
Where do you end?
And Brian, you agree with that?
I'm fine with that, but I would also propose that we insert before prioritize as identify and then prioritize capital improvement.
You suggested to Everett, not to me.
Friendly amendments are on,
okay.
our motion.
Yep, okay. Discussion?
Did you
Sharon?
say identify then prioritize? I just want to make sure
Yes.
I got it right.
And this is more just discussion, not any change at the moment. Who gets to decide that, and who has input on what capital improvements are?
It's assigned to Office of Management.
I think it would fall to whatever department the capital improvement fell under. If it was a water line, it would be the water department. If it was a roadway, it would be transportation. If it was park, it would be park.
In that case, it's a policy. It's not an action.
Chair.
Yes.
I mean, it seems that 3.16 is what we've all been discussing since October. I mean, it's the community plan. It's very nebulous. I'm not really fond of it.
It's not an action, that's for sure. Tova?
Can someone help jog my memory about the policy that we had that was related to this? Because I feel like we talked about this recently in the policy context, and the astonishing thing was there was no plan. There was no requirement to prioritize things that had brought the most resilience. So I'm wondering if this is actually the corollary action for that policy that we already discussed. Karen, you remember what I'm talking about?
I do, but I don't remember which one. Let me look it up just a second.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, an action needs to be assigned to somebody. An action is supposed to be executed, implemented. So who is this assigned to? I mean, like Everett said, yes, if this is a policy, yes, then Department of Public Works should take it into account. The Department of Environmental Management should take it into account. Planning Department should take it into account. But if it's a specific action, who should do this? Kyoki.
So in the past, we've added simple language like prioritize and implement. Then it kind of becomes an action. Prioritize and implement capital improvement projects designed to.
This is the whole, it's looking at all of them. It's not one department doing it. It's saying all the capital improvement projects, prioritize all of them, which is one of kind of the things you do with this plan. I didn't write the plan. I'm just...
Tova?
I'm wondering if it's saying, if it's not the identify then, but it's you have a list of capital improvements at any given time. This is a request from the community plan to start with the ones that add maximum resilience. So, if you have a choice of fixing the road that doesn't get you out of a spot with sea level rise or fixing a road that does, this tells you our priority as a community is to prioritize the one that's going to help us, as climate challenges come, that kind of thing. I mean, I hear you, it's still it's like an overlay action rather than a specific action, so maybe it's really not an action, maybe it's a policy, but.
That makes more sense, though. But I think then, and I don't remember what you exactly said, Toba, but I think we should rephrase it to be closer to that, so that that doesn't become confusing. Because what you said, I got. Reading that, not as much. So do you have a friendly amendment?
If this really is an action for all the departments, then it should probably spell that out so they all know they need to take this into account.
It's the Office of Management that's doing it. It's not all the departments. It's not them each separately prioritizing their, it's making the budgets reflect that you want to prioritize capital improvement projects designed to maximize results.
Jennifer?
Can I go back to what Keoki said? What did you say? Prioritize and implement. Yeah, so take out identify, friendly amendment, remove identify, then prioritize and put prioritize and implement capital improvement projects, and that becomes an action. So that resolves that point. And then we could still remove that last sentence that Everett suggested. That would be my friendly amendment.
Okay with the...
I would accept with one friendly amendment to the friendly amendment. Actually, let me just read this again. Prioritize it. Never mind. Yes, I accept it.
I don't think the Office of Management is going to implement those things, though. It's going to be like the Department of Public Works, Department of Environmental Management, etc. The Office of Management does not implement anything like that.
So, Karen, I guess you had a different thought on that. Can you share your thoughts? Or anybody else?
They do make the budget. And that's step one in getting things implemented.
That's prioritizing, but implementation, it would be up to each department, as far as I can tell.
So, Karen, would it be better than, say, when budgeting, that it's or prioritize funding for capital and project? Yeah, that's where I was going to go, is changing it from implement to budget funding.
So the budget and the capital improvement program have to be consistent with the community plans anyway, so that's already there, that the budget and the CIP have to be consistent with the community plans. And you already have in many parts about maximizing resiliency, so I think I don't know if this is actually needed because it's pretty much implied, in my opinion.
We're back to the multiple benefits. Jennifer?
So Jackie, are you recommending we strike this whole action?
Well, it's already implied from Chapter 280B of the Maui County Code, and as the chair mentioned, it's too broad. It doesn't really assign anything to anybody, which they have to do it anyway.
I'll modify my motion to delete this entirely.
Second, accepted it?
That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Any objections to removing this action? Okay, fine, we remove that action. 3.17. I Identify and encourage additional, I think we've talked about this a little bit on the policy side also. Identify and encourage additional new users of recycled water, including but not limited to parks, golf courses, agriculture, and new developments, with a focus on areas Mauka of Pi'ilani Highway. Expand recycled water storage and distribution lines in South Maui to support new customers and increase overall use.
I'd like to make a motion.
Motion by Everett.
Slightly different than this. I would like to delete the word new. And then with a focus on the largest users of potable water. And then keep the second sentence as is. So it would read, identify and encourage additional new users of recycled water, including but not limited to parks, golf courses, agriculture, developments with a focus on the largest users of potable water. Expand recycled water storage and distribution lines in South Maui to support new customers and increase overall use. Well, that's my motion.
Did you say of potable water or of recycled water? Focus on that.
Focus on the largest users of potable water, so you can convert the potable water users to recycled water users.
Is there a second? Second by Jennifer. Discussion?
Sorry, one more question. And are you striking areas Mauka of Pi'ilani Highway?
Yes, because the largest users of potable water are Makai of Pi'ilani Highway.
Golf courses don't use potable water.
Agreed, we can strike that.
They're not allowed to use potable water, but they might be brackish. But I mean, they could switch from whatever it is they're using to recycled, but they're not allowed to use potable water.
And they would gladly switch because of they would have this power savings that the pumps are expensive to run. So if they could just purchase recycled water, that would be a lot less expensive.
Better than using groundwater. Yeah.
So do you still want to strike golf courses?
I think it makes sense to keep them because the less we pull from wells, the better if we can use recycled water for that. Okay, discussion?
Sure.
With Brian?
So this kind of came up in something that Tova and I started last week. We asked Karen to research, and we got off on a little tangent of actions that we were looking at. But one that came up today, and with Tova's help, she helped me see where the R1 lines are not. Because originally what I kind of suggested I was going to have as an action is get more of, to your point, get more R1 lines down to like the hotel resorts, all that kind of stuff. I was even looking at our property and make sure that that's there. But then Tova pointed out, I think, a really good point of going Mauka of Pi'ilani, that if that's being developed, that infrastructure, when you look at the maps, isn't there either. So I have to say I'm actually very torn because my original thought was kind of aligned with you, Everett, but then when Tova and she was pointing me in the direction of kind of getting some research, it kind of changed my thinking of saying, if that's where it's being developed and we're not putting the infrastructure there, we're in a bit of a catch-22. So I don't know the answer. I just think it's interesting that we're now here based on that conversation. So I was just sharing thoughts.
I think with the stuff Mauka, it's so close to the wastewater treatment plant. And if you're running a line out to Wailea, the largest water users are the Hotel Wailea, probably is the largest water user. If you run a line out to the intersection, Rob, that you identified last week, then you're going to be basically running that line right down Pi'ilani Highway, and it's easy to do laterals to serve it, anything Mauka.
completely agree. I just want to make sure that I recognize what Tova said because I thought it was very helpful. But I want to kind of make sure that we expose it here for discussions as well, just so that we're kind of looking at things eyes open, whole thing. I wholeheartedly believe it, understand and agree with what you're saying, so I support that. I also support what Tova's suggesting.
But if you look at where the Department of Environmental Management has planned lines, they are up there. So I don't think that's really an issue. That's already being taken care of. I think what we're talking about here is new ones, new plans. Tova?
I'm so sorry, I have no idea what you just said. The acoustics are really awful over here. So if I don't know. Feel free to restate, otherwise I'll just say what I was going to say. I'll just keep going. I like the language like it is here, Brian, because it leaves it open. Like, if it turns out that it's more efficient to run a line down Pete Lunny Highway, and that can happen sooner, great. If they decide, well, actually things are getting developed quickly and it's more efficient to get more water used in these other ways, I mean, I think it will be governed by as long as we have expansion, this will allow it to happen whatever way is most efficient and most timely, I think.
And I mean, we're wasting a resource now that could be making us money. Could be saving potable water, and the fees for that water could serve as a bond to help pay for the line going out to Wailea.
Yeah, I mean, MRTP has the R1 water already. The school area already has the R1 water. The lines that the department was sketching that they're going to do, they're already there for like the Halakala Ranch and the Konoulu Ranch land. So I don't see an issue there. The issue is really going south and going Makai. Seconded by Jennifer? Yeah. Okay, further discussion? Any objections? Okay, adopted with those changes. Okay. Next one, identify a new location for the Kihei Recycling and Redemption Center. Do we have a motion? Motion from Daniel.
I don't know if I have a motion, but I had the same query as you did. You know, what's the reason for identifying a new location for the Kihei Recycling and Redemption Center? Is there a reason?
Mike has the answer.
Well, I know it's proposed that the community park is going to expand and take that away. That would be part of the park. But the reality is it's decades and decades away. They can't do the next segment, proposed segment of expansion of the community park until they get the north-south collector road segment. And that's not even on the books yet. I mean, they're talking about next 10 years doing the two segments between Ka'ona'ulu and Waipualani. So if they can expand the park for the next segment, by the time they reach where that is, maybe it'll be a new community plan, another 30 years. But that was why it was talked about moving it, was because it was going to be part of the park. That was the reason I understood.
I move that we delete this item.
We skip it. Is there a second?
Yeah,
Second by Daniel. Further discussion? Any objections? Okay, we've deleted this 3.18. 3.19, conduct a feasibility study to determine if a modern desalination facility or direct, indirect potable reuse are additional viable water source options for South Maui. Do we have a motion?
I'll move for discussion.
Move for discussion. Do we have a second? Second by Daniel.
For discussion.
Yes.
I suggest that we separate these, and I think the low-hanging fruit is to conduct a feasibility study on extending the economics, cost and revenues associated with extending an R1 line. Rob, help me out with that intersection. What was the?
I think that the intention of the second part is making R0. In other words, refining the water so it's drinkable, potable.
Oh.
So I think they're two different.
I
think you're right that these are two separate proposals.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up. I'm still thinking irrigation.
Oh.
Well, I still think we should separate it, though. I think treating it to our potable standards would be a lot less expensive than doing a desal facility with less environmental concerns.
So you're proposing making two actions out of this, or just striking part of it, or?
I would strike the desal facility.
Is there a second?
Depends on how the public's going to feel about drinking their pee.
That's the thing. I agree that the desalination is going to be a lot more expensive, more complicated, but there are psychological barriers to the second part.
But it would be mixed anyway. I mean, seriously, it wouldn't just be, the sales pitch would, it would be
10% recycled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tova?
I'm okay if we separate them out because they're different. But I mean, I think looking into desal as a long-term plan, who knows what's going to happen 10 years from now in terms of energy. There might suddenly be a case where that makes sense, or things are happening with our population we don't know about. And toilet to tap. People do it. We should be looking at it as something that's explored and perhaps motivates people to be more sensible with the potable water they have now if they don't like it. But we should definitely be looking at that. It also would encourage higher levels of treatment that we need anyway. I mean, the PFAS laws just passed. So we got to start getting more of the contaminants out of our water anyway. So I think it helps to push that agenda.
Perhaps if you do keep them both, you might want to separate them, because I can see desalinization being a study done by the Department of Water Supply, but reuse, that's really at this time DEM's kuleana, not water departments. If it does become a source, then of course they would work together, but the reuse would actually, the filtering to make it reusable would be DEM's responsibility, not water departments.
Okay, so we have a motion to separate these two. Do we have a second? Well, there's a race here, but I think Brian got it first. The motion is to separate them, and then we'll process each one individually. Okay. Discussion about separating them. Daniel?
I agree.
Okay.
Call for the vote.
What was that?
Call for the vote.
Okay. Any objections? Okay. So we'll separate this into two. You already made a motion to focus on the potable reuse, right?
Yes.
Let's deal with that one first then. Is there a second for that one? Second by Brian. Discussion? I actually did have a discussion about this with Stuart Stamp back when he was head of DEM, and he thought it was feasible. He thought it'll cost money, but the technology's there, they could do it. He thought the problem was psychological more than technical or even financial. But I would say that, kind of like in line with what Tova was saying, that these are things you need to keep studying, because technology changes, and you kind of need to be ahead of the game here if you want to implement it. So even this is not saying we're going to implement this. This says we're going to study it. So that seems to me to make sense. Okay. Okay, it's up on the screen. Discussion? Tova?
This might be off color, but I do wonder if toilet to tap is a clearer way to describe that. Because I had to read it 3 times, and this is the kind of thing I like, to understand that was what it was talking about.
What if we just put potable in? A viable potable water source option for South Maui?
This
I'm
is
just
specific.
thinking of marketing it to the public. It just sounds...
I think it's catchy. I can see a lot of commercials. Toilet to tap, yeah.
We can bottle it, export it.
No, there's brewing companies on the mainland who do a whole toilet to tap beer thing as a part of the promotion because it sells it. Can you taste the difference?
But I mean, since it was unclear to people what this is about, I think it just spelled out that this is about using recycled water.
Can you repeat that?
So since people were unclear on what this meant, I think it should spell out that this involves recycled water.
And you don't like toilet to tap?
Toilet to tap is too direct. There should be a phase in between there.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Not just something that makes it more clear. Because I thought we were talking about gray water for a second there. I thought we were talking about all kinds of things before I realized, oh, wait a minute. We're talking about higher, advanced wastewater treatment processing for reuse is what we're talking about.
Yes.
But it's not super clear.
Okay with that change? Daniel, okay with that change? Discussion? Any objections? Okay, I finally have adopted the part about the R0 water. Going on to the other part, modern desalinization facility study. And let's see, we didn't really have a motion for that. Do we have a motion for that one? Moved by Everett, second by Brian. Daniel?
I'll call for the question.
Call for the question? Okay, any objections? Okay, I finally have adopted the part about study on modern desalinization facility. We have one planning department proposal left for action. 3.20, in partnership with the state's Department of Land and Natural Resources, update drought management plan and implement priority actions for South Maui. Do we have a motion for this? Motion by Brennan?
Me.
Do we have a second? Second by Brian. Discussion?
How the DLNR, just trying to understand how DLNR is involved with this drought management plan.
They coordinate with the counties on the drought management plans. So they're involved by being kind of the overseer.
So it's kind of like they can go up Mauka too then, yeah? Makai Mauka? Or it's like, you know what I mean? With their jurisdiction can go up Mauka too, right? Yeah, that sounds good, but they always short-handed. So just trying to figure that, how they do that with their short staff.
So when I was at the Department of Water Supply, we would have our plan, but we'd always share that information with the Department of Land and Natural Resources. So the department does most of the work. They're just kind of, we provide them the information. They have guidance and things like that. But
So just curious, does that mean they have to sign off on it, or is it just providing input?
for the work that we did, it was more just keeping them informed, providing input. But then I think when there was funding opportunities or other things, then they would reach out to us and we'd work with them.
Thank you. Okay, discussion? Daniel?
I have 15 things I'd like to talk about. It's this long list. Actually, I don't have any discussion.
Any objections? I find we've adopted 3.20 as written. So do we have any additional actions for topic 3?
I just wanted to double check on 319 if it's R0 or R1. Oh, okay.
R0.
Oh, okay.
Potable.
That's what it, okay.
Any additional actions for topic 3, resiliency, going once, going twice, closed? Okay. We have finished section 3, resiliency. And we're done. At 8:59 p.m., 1 minute ahead of schedule.